In today's video, we are tapping into the third and final temptation the devil used to tempt Jesus in the wilderness, and that he also uses to tempt us today. And that is trying to tap into our natural tendency to want what we see, or as we say today, keeping up with the Joneses. So let's get into it. So now we're going to move on into temptation 3, and that's found in the verses 8 through 9. And again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and said unto them, These things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. This time, Satan used our natural or fleshly tendency to want what we see, which is covetousness, to tempt Jesus. Now, how did he do that? You see, he showed Jesus all of these wonderful things, but it came with a condition. The same thing happens to us today, only it's packaged a little differently. It's a little bit prettier. See, the devil doesn't expressly give the condition of falling down and worshiping him. But ultimately, that's what we do when we put anything before God. Now, I'm going to repeat that. Ultimately, we are falling down and worshiping the prince of this world, who is Satan, when we put anything before God. See, when we see something that we want, like, a house, a car, a career, a certain status, etc., but we miss worship service or cut down on our time in fellowship with the Lord because we have to work to get it or to maintain it, we are essentially bowing down in worship to something that is not God. Now, we may think that we're doing something good, right? Oh, I'm increasing my lot in life. I'm increasing my status. I'm building generational wealth. That's what we may think that we're doing. But if it comes at the expense of your relationship with God, then it's not worth it. Because at the end of the day, we can't bring that house with us. We can't bring that car with us. We can't bring that job with us. So none of it matters if it jeopardizes our relationship with God. So again, if anything that we're doing is jeopardizing our relationship with God, it is not God. It is a temptation that Satan is using to draw us away from God. Ultimately, the best thing that we can do is just get with God and see what his plan is, what his plan for our career is, what house he wants, what car he wants us to drive. That's a foolproof way of staying within the will of God, because God knows what you can afford. God knows what you can handle that won't jeopardize your time or your relationship with him. So why not consult him first? Now we're moving into the conclusion and what I like to call the mic drop, and that's in verses 10 and 11. Then saith Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. Now, I say this is the mic drop because it's at this point that Jesus dealt the final blow, okay? And that's how we have to be today. So we must put God first in all areas of our lives. That includes our own vision and our own goals for what we thought our life was supposed to look like. After all, who do you think will ultimately have a better plan? You or God? And I want you to ask yourself that question. Who do you think will have the better plan for your life? You or the God who knows all, who sees how that situation is going to turn out, who knows what the end result will be? The answer is obvious, right? So after Jesus did all he could to stand, the devil left him and he received the help that he needed. So you see, we have to do our part. We have to stand. We have to put the devil in his place. When he comes with all these temptations, we have to know the word to tell him, no, not so. I'm not going to do it because the word says this or the word says that. So that's how we have to be today, just as Jesus was. We have to stand firm. That's our job. That's not God's job. It's our job to resist. It's our job to stand. God cannot do that for us. But he is there to help us, and he has given us all the tools that we need to be able to do it. But we have to be the ones to pick up those tools and use them. Before we jump into the summary, I want to take a pause here and say, if you found this video valuable in any way, be sure to give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. We also ask that you consider sharing with a friend. Not only does it let us know that the content we're providing adds value, but it also helps our videos reach a wider audience. So with that being said, let's get into the summary. Now, one of the things I will say, this has definitely been a journey for me, and I hope it has been for you. Really walking through Matthew chapter 4 and looking at those three temptations that the devil used to tempt Jesus, and also exploring how he still uses it against us today. So, one of the points that we highlighted in the first part of our series was how the devil came to Jesus when he was at his weakest point. And he does the same thing to us today. It's always at those extremes when we're either at our lowest, when we're tired or we're weary or we're going through something, or when we're at our highest point where we're on top of the world and we don't think anything can go wrong. It's at those two extremes that he comes to tempt us. So we always want to keep that in mind. So in temptation 1, we saw that he came to Jesus with pride and also with something that he knew Jesus would want the most, or a need that Jesus had at that very moment. Then with temptation 2, we saw he came with pride again, but this time he coupled it with a manipulation of one of God's promises, which, in my opinion, is one of the most common temptations used today. Misrepresenting God's word in order to manipulate us to do something that we otherwise wouldn't do. And then we just covered temptation 3, which was, him using our natural tendency to want what we see. So one thing is for sure, all three temptations were meant to produce the same result. Do you kind of have an idea of what that is? I know I asked that question at the end of part 2 of our series to kind of get in the mindset of he came at Jesus with these temptations like he comes at us today. But it's not just for the sake of tempting us. There's always a desired result. If you think you kind of figured out what it is, drop it in the comments below and let's talk about it, along with any other questions or clarifications you may have about our series. To get more details on Temptation 1 and Temptation 2, as well as examples of how those temptations apply to us today, be sure to check out part 1 and part 2 of our series, which I'll link at the end of this video. Now, as always, guys, I never like to end a video without letting you know that you are loved beyond measure by the creator of the universe. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.